Hyunwoo Kim stood at the front of classroom 7B, looking at the most unusual group of students he had ever taught. The room was specially built to fit different types of beings. Some desks were low for the small crystal-like aliens. Others were strong metal for the heavy rock people. In the back corner sat a huge chair that could hold an ursine. Today was special. For the first time in the history of Nexus Academy, they had an ursine student in class. "Good morning, everyone," Hyunwoo said with a warm smile. His voice was calm and friendly, the way his father had taught him when he was learning to be a diplomat. "Today we will talk about how different species show respect to each other." The students looked around the room. There were humans, of course. Young Mi sat in the front row, always ready to help others. Daeho, Hyunwoo's student helper, arranged papers on his desk. But all eyes kept moving to the back corner. Greg sat there like a mountain of brown fur and muscle. He was only 14 years old, but he was already bigger than most adult humans. His dark eyes watched everything. His sharp teeth showed when he breathed. The other students tried not to stare, but it was hard not to look. The ursine people had just joined the Galactic Education program. Their leaders wanted their young ones to learn about other species. But this was new for everyone. Ursine cubs had never been in school with other aliens before. "Let's start with a simple question," Hyunwoo said. "How do your people say hello to friends?" A small crystalline student raised her thin arm. Her body looked like living glass that changed colors when she spoke. "We touch our crystal hearts and share light," she said in a voice like tiny bells. "Beautiful," Hyunwoo said. "What about you, Taemin?" The human boy smiled. "We shake hands or wave. Sometimes we hug people we know well." One by one, students shared their customs. The water people made soft bubble sounds. The plant people opened their flower faces. Everyone listened and learned. Then Hyunwoo looked at Grex. "And how do ursine people greet each other?" Grex's voice was deep and rough. "We show our strength. The strongest leads. The weak follow." His words made some students move back in their chairs. "I see," Hyunwoo said calmly. "And what happens when someone is not strong enough to lead?" "They learn their place," Grex said. His eyes got harder. "Or they fight until they do." The crystalline student made a soft, scared sound. Her colors turned pale blue, which meant fear for her people. Some of the smaller students looked worried. Hyunwoo saw this, but his voice stayed gentle. "That's interesting, Grex, but here in our classroom we have a different way. Here everyone has value, not just the strongest ones." Grex's ears moved back against his head. This was a sign that ursine people were getting angry. "Value comes from strength," he said, his voice getting lower. "Weak things break. Strong things survive." "But look around you," Hyunwoo said, walking closer to Grex's desk. "See how many different kinds of beings are here? The crystalline people are not strong like you, but they can do things with light that no one else can do. Is that not valuable?" The crystalline student's colors got a little brighter. She felt better hearing the teacher defend her people. Grex looked at the small glass-like being. She would break if touched too hard. "How is breaking useful?" "Because she is not meant for the same work you are," Hyunwoo explained. "You are strong and brave. She is smart and can work with energy. Both are needed. In my world, the weak serve the strong," Grex said, standing up. His full height made him look like a giant in the room. "That is how things should be." Young Mi raised her hand. "But Grex, what if the weak ones have good ideas? Should we ignore them just because they are not big?" Grex turned to look at her. His dark eyes were cold. "Ideas from the weak are usually weak ideas. Strong beings make strong choices." Hyunwoo could feel the room getting tense. This was the moment he had been training for. His father had always told him that the hardest part of diplomacy was finding common ground when cultures were very different. "Grex," he said in a quiet but firm voice, "I understand that your people value strength. But in this classroom, we must also value kindness. When you call others weak, it hurts their feelings. That is not the way we treat classmates here." The room went completely quiet. Every student stopped moving. Even the air seemed to hold still. Grex's eyes locked onto Hyunwoo's. The young ursine's muscles got tight under his fur. His hands made fists. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then Grex did something that changed everything. He growled. It was not a small sound. It was deep and dangerous, like thunder rolling through the mountains. It was the sound ursine warriors made before they attacked their enemies. It was a challenge. It was a threat. It was a promise of violence. The crystalline student made a tiny cry and fell off her chair. Two of the plant students closed their flower faces in terror. Daeho jumped up from his desk, ready to help his teacher. Young Mi's face went white with fear, but Hyunwoo did not move back. He did not show fear. He just looked at Grex with steady eyes. "Grex," he said, his voice still calm but now with steel in it. "You will say sorry to your classmates. Right now." The words hit the room like lightning. An Ursine cub being asked to apologize? It had never happened before. In Ursine culture, saying sorry meant you had been defeated in battle. It meant you were giving up your honor. It meant you were admitting you were weak. Grex's growl got louder. His claws came out, scratching marks in his metal desk. "I do not say sorry," he said, his words coming out like rocks falling. "Ursine people do not bow to anyone. In this classroom, all people show respect to others," Hyunwoo said. "That includes you." The two of them stared at each other. The human teacher, small but brave, facing down a young alien who could tear him apart with his bare hands. Around them, students watched in shock and fear. Nobody knew that this moment would change everything. Nobody knew that what happened next would be talked about across the galaxy. They just knew that something big was about to happen. And in the silence that followed, everyone held their breath and waited. The news traveled fast through Nexus Academy. By lunchtime, every student, teacher, and worker knew what had happened in Classroom 7B. An Ursine cub had growled at a human teacher. A human teacher had asked the cub to say sorry. The cub had refused. In the hallways, students whispered to each other in scared voices. The small aliens stayed in groups, afraid to walk alone. The stronger species talked about what this meant for the school. Everyone knew that Ursine growls were serious business. Hyunwoo sat in his office, looking out the window at the stars. His hands were steady, but his mind was working hard. He knew he had started something big. The question was, had he done the right thing? A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," he said. Janae walked into the room. She was the human cultural liaison, the person whose job was to help different species understand each other. Her face looked worried. "Hyunwoo," she said, sitting down in the chair across from his desk. "We have a problem." "A big one." "I know," Hyunwoo said. "But what was I supposed to do? Let him scare the other students? Let him think he can threaten anyone who disagrees with him?" Janae shook her head. "You don't understand. The crystalline students' parents have already called the academy. They want Grex removed from school immediately. They say their daughter is too afraid to come to class." Hyunwoo felt his heart sink. The crystalline people were gentle and peaceful. If they were scared, it was a real problem. "There's more," Janae continued. "Grex's father is coming. Ambassador Kurdan will be here in 2 hours, and he is not happy." Ambassador Kurdan was one of the most powerful Ursine military commanders. He had fought in 3 galactic wars. He had never lost a battle. If he was angry about his son being asked to apologize, things could get very bad very quickly. "What does Professor Veltar say?" Hyunwoo asked. The headmaster was wise and calm. Maybe he would know what to do. "He's worried," Janae said. "The Ursine Confederation only just agreed to send students here. If this goes wrong, they might pull out of the program completely. That would set back interspecies education by decades." Hyunwoo stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, he could see ships coming and going from the space station. Each one carried beings from different worlds, all trying to learn to live together in peace. It was a beautiful dream. But dreams could break so easily. "I won't change my mind," he said finally. What Grex did was wrong. In a shared learning space, everyone has to follow the same basic rules. "Even if it means war?" Janae asked quietly. Before Hyunwoo could answer, his office door opened again. This time it was Daeho, his student helper. The young man looked excited and worried at the same time. "Teacher," Daeho said, "Grex is in the common room. He's just sitting there not talking to anyone. But here's the strange part, he's not acting angry anymore. He looks unconfused." This was interesting. Hyunwoo had expected the young Ursine to stay mad. Confusion was something different. "And there's something else," Daeho added. "Some of the other students are defending him." Young Mai started it. "She says Grex shouldn't be kicked out for acting like his people taught him to act." Ginny looked surprised. "The human students are defending him? After he scared everyone?" "Not just the human students," Daeho said. Taemin talked to some of the others. They think it's unfair to punish Grex for following his culture. They say the school should teach him new ways, not throw him out for not knowing them already. Hyunwoo felt a small spark of hope. Maybe the students understood something the adults were missing. 2 hours later, the space dock announced an incoming ship. Ambassador Kurdan had arrived. The ambassador was even bigger than his son. His brown fur was marked with scars from old battles. His uniform was covered with medals and honors. When he walked, the metal floors made sounds under his heavy feet. Professor Veltar met him at the dock. The elderly Aquarian was graceful and calm, moving like water as he led the ambassador to the meeting room. Hyunwoo and Jin-A were already waiting there. Ambassador Kurdan did not sit down. He stood like a mountain in the middle of the room, his dark eyes burning with anger. "You have insulted my son," he said, his voice like distant thunder. "You have insulted my family. You have insulted my people." "With respect, Ambassador," Hyunwoo said, standing up to face him, "I asked your son to show basic courtesy to his classmates. That's not an insult. That's education." The ambassador's growl was even deeper than his son's had been. "You asked him to submit. You asked him to show weakness. In Ursine culture, apologies are only given by the defeated to the victor after combat. What you asked is the greatest dishonor possible." "Then help me understand," Hyunwoo said, keeping his voice calm. "How do your people make things right when they hurt someone by mistake?" "We do not hurt people by mistake," Kurdan said. "We are careful with our strength. But if damage is done, we repair it with action, not with weak words." Professor Veltar moved forward like flowing water. "Perhaps we can find a middle path," he said in his soft voice. "A way that honors both cultures." "There is no middle path," the ambassador said firmly. "Either you respect our ways or you do not. If you force our cubs to act like other species, you are trying to make them weak. We will not allow it. And if we let your cubs frighten other students, we fail in our duty to keep everyone safe," Hyunwoo replied. "I won't let any student terrorize others, no matter what species they come from." The room went quiet. The two sides stared at each other, neither willing to give ground. Then Professor Veltar spoke again. "What does Grex himself want? Has anyone asked the young one his thoughts?" This was a new idea. In all the arguing about culture and honor, nobody had thought to ask Grex what he felt about the situation. "Bring him here," Ambassador Kurdan said. "Let my son speak for himself." A few minutes later, Grex entered the room. He looked even bigger next to his father, but somehow smaller too. His eyes moved between the adults, uncertain. "Tell them," his father commanded. "Tell them that you will not dishonor yourself with weak apologies." But Grex did not answer right away. He looked at Hyunwoo for a long moment. Then he looked at his father. Then back at the teacher. "The human did not try to make me weak," Grex said slowly. "He tried to teach me something new." Ambassador Kurdan's eyes went wide. This was not what he had expected to hear. "What do you mean?" Professor Veltar asked gently. Grex took a deep breath. "In our world, the strong rule and the weak obey. But here I saw something different. The teacher stood up to me even though I am bigger. He was not weak. He was something else." "What do you call this something else?" Hyunwoo asked. Grex thought hard, searching for words. "Strong in a different way." "Strong with purpose?" The room was completely silent. Everyone was listening to something they had never heard before. An Ursine cub trying to understand a new kind of strength. And in that silence, the first seeds of change began to grow. That night, Hyunwoo could not sleep. He walked through the quiet halls of the academy, thinking hard about the problem. Grex's words kept playing in his mind. Strong in a different way. Maybe the young Ursine was starting to understand something. But his father was not. Ambassador Kurdan had left the meeting angry and disappointed in his son. He had called for more Ursine adults to come to the academy. This was getting bigger, not smaller. Hyunwoo found himself in the academy's library. The huge room was filled with information from thousands of worlds. If there was an answer, maybe he could find it here. He spent hours reading about Ursine culture. Most of what he found was what he already knew. They were warriors. They valued strength above all else. They never apologized because it meant defeat. But then, buried deep in an old text, he found something interesting. Strength acknowledgement, he read out loud. An ancient Ursine tradition where a warrior can show respect for an opponent's courage without admitting defeat. This was different. This was not about saying sorry. This was about recognizing strength in others. The next morning, Hyunwoo called his class together. But instead of starting the lesson, he asked a question. "Yesterday, something difficult happened in our classroom. I want to hear what you all think about it. Mi Young, a quiet human girl who loved to study different cultures, raised her hand. "I've been reading about Earth sign people," she said. "They think saying sorry makes you weak because it means you lost a fight." But Grex wasn't fighting anyone. He just scared people by mistake. "It wasn't by mistake," said one of the plant students. His flower face was closed, showing he was still afraid. "He meant to scare us. That growl was a threat." "Maybe," said young me. "But maybe he was just acting the way his people taught him. If someone told you your people's ways were wrong, wouldn't you get upset too?" Taman nodded. "It's like if someone told us that shaking hands was stupid. We might get mad even if we didn't mean to hurt anyone." Grex sat in the back listening to everything. His face was hard to read, but his ears were pointed forward, which meant he was paying attention. "What do you think, Grex?" Hyunwoo asked. "Help us understand your side." The young Ursine was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in his deep, careful voice. "In my world, when someone challenges your words, you must show them you are strong. If you don't, they will think you are weak. Then everyone will think you are weak. But we're not in your world," said the crystalline student, her colors still pale from fear. "We're here together. Can't you be strong in a way that doesn't scare us?" Grex looked at her for a long time. "I don't know how," he said simply. This was the moment Hyunwoo had been waiting for. "Maybe I can help with that," he said. "Grex, I've been learning about your people. You have something called strength acknowledgement, right?" Grex's eyes got wide. Very few non-Ursine people knew about that old tradition. "You know of this?" Grex asked. "A little," Hyunwoo said. "It's a way for warriors to show respect without giving up honor, correct?" "Yes," Grex said slowly. "When two warriors fight well, they can acknowledge each other's strength. It is not defeat. It is recognition." "Then here's what I propose," Hyunwoo said. "Instead of apologizing, show us strength acknowledgement. Teach the class about Ursine values. Help us understand why the growl happened. Show your strength by being a teacher, not just a warrior." The classroom went completely quiet. This was something new. This wasn't forcing Grex to act like other species. This was asking him to be strong in his own way while also helping others. Grex thought about this for a long time. "You want me to teach?" "I want you to lead," Hyunwoo said. "Show us what Ursine strength really means. Help your classmates learn about your people. That takes courage." For the first time since the incident, Grex looked interested. "This would not dishonor me. Leading others to understanding? That's one of the highest honors I can think of." But before Grex could answer, the classroom door opened. Ambassador Kurdan walked in, followed by two other large Ursine adults. One was Captain Rothak, the head of Ursine security. The other was someone Hyunwoo didn't recognize. "Father," Grex said, standing up quickly. "I have come to take you home," the ambassador said firmly. "This place tries to corrupt our cubs with soft thinking. We are leaving." "Wait," Hyunwoo said, also standing. "Your son was just about to show us something important about Ursine culture. Don't you want to see what he's learned?" Captain Rothak stepped forward. He was even more scarred than the ambassador, and his eyes were cold as space. "We have heard enough human words," he growled. "The boy will come home and learn proper Ursine ways." "But I want to try the teacher's idea," Grex said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. His father's face showed shock. Captain Rothak looked angry. But Grex kept talking. "The human found something in our old ways, something I had forgotten. Strength acknowledgement is not weak. It is a warrior's tradition." "You would perform rituals for these soft beings?" Captain Rothak demanded. "I would show them that Ursine strength is not just about fighting," Grex said, his voice getting stronger. "I would teach them to respect us by understanding us." Ambassador Kurdan stared at his son. "And what of your honor? What of the insult to our family?" Grex stood up to his full height. "There was no insult, father. The teacher challenged me, yes, but he did not try to make me weak. He tried to make me think." The third Ursine adult, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke. His voice was old and wise. "The cub speaks truth." Everyone turned to look at him. He was smaller than the others, and his fur was gray with age. But when he spoke, both the ambassador and the captain showed respect. "Elder Sunho," Ambassador Kurdan said, bowing his head slightly. "I have been watching this academy for many weeks," the elder said. "I have seen something here that impressed me. Not weakness, not corruption, but wisdom." He walked slowly to where Grex stood. This human teacher did not try to break our cub. He found a way to honor our traditions while building bridges with others. That is not easy. That takes great skill. Elder Sunho turned to look at Hyunwoo. Tell me, young teacher, do you know why we Ursine people value strength so much? Because it keeps you alive in a dangerous galaxy, Hyunwoo answered. Because the weak cannot protect themselves or their families. Correct. But tell me, is it not also strength to protect those who are different from you? Is it not strength to find peace where others find only war? The room was completely silent. Even Captain Rothak was listening carefully. In the old days, Elder Sunho continued, our greatest warriors were not just fighters. They were leaders. They found ways to win without destroying everything around them. Perhaps it is time our cubs learned these older, deeper forms of strength. He looked at Grex. Show us, young warrior. Show us this strength acknowledgement. Show us how an Ursine can be strong while building bridges. Grex looked around the room. His father watched him with worried eyes. Captain Rothak looked skeptical. The other students waited to see what would happen. And Hyunwoo stood ready to support whatever choice the young Ursine made. I will try, Grex said finally. And with those simple words, everything began to change. Grex stood in front of the class, feeling more nervous than he had ever felt in his life. Fighting was easy. You just used your strength and claws. But teaching? This was something completely new. I don't know how to start, he admitted. Elder Sunho moved closer. Begin with truth, young warrior. Tell them why you growled. Grex took a deep breath. When the teacher said I was being unkind, it felt like he was calling me weak. In my world, if someone calls you weak, you must prove you are strong. The growl was my way of saying I am not weak. Young Mai raised her hand. But we didn't think you were weak, Grex. We thought you were scary. Scary? Grex looked confused. But I am just a cub. I'm not even fully grown yet. Bo Young, a human student who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Grex, you're twice the size of most of us. When you growl like that, it sounds like you want to hurt someone. This seemed to surprise Grex. He looked down at his big hands and thick arms, as if seeing them for the first time. I did not think of that, he said slowly. To me, the growl just meant I am strong, but to you it meant I will hurt you. Yes, said the crystalline student, her colors getting a little brighter. That's exactly what it meant to us. Grex was quiet for a moment, thinking hard. So when I tried to show I was not weak, I actually made you afraid of me. Right, said Taemin. And when you're afraid, it's hard to learn anything. Captain Rothak stepped forward, looking angry. This is foolish talk. Fear teaches respect. The weak should fear the strong. That is natural order. But Elder Sunho held up his hand. Let the cub finish his teaching, Rothak. This is valuable learning. Grex looked at his classmates with new eyes. If I scared you, then I failed as a warrior. What do you mean? Hyunwoo asked. A true warrior protects others, Grex explained. If my strength made you too afraid to learn, then I was not being strong in the right way. Ambassador Kurdan looked shocked. My son, you are not responsible for their weakness. But father, Grex said, turning to face him, Elder Sunho taught us that the greatest warriors were also leaders. How can I lead people who are too afraid of me to listen? This was the moment when Bo Young did something that surprised everyone. She stood up and walked over to Grex. I'm not afraid of you, she said, looking up at the huge Ursine cub. I think you're trying really hard to understand us. That makes you brave in a different way. You think I am brave? Grex asked, his voice soft with wonder. Yes, Bo Young said. It would be easier for you to just stay angry. But you're trying to learn new things. That's harder than fighting. Daeho stood up too. Bo Young is right. We should be helping Grex learn our ways, not punishing him for not knowing them already. More students began to stand. Young Mi, Taemin, even some of the plant students who had been so scared before. This is what we should be doing, Young Mi said. Learning from each other, not fighting with each other. Captain Rothak looked disgusted. Soft thinking. This is exactly what I warned about. These aliens are making our cub weak with their friendship. But Elder Sunho was smiling. Rothak, you see weakness where I see wisdom. Look at what is happening here. I see our traditions being corrupted, Captain Rothak replied. I see our traditions being honored, Elder Sunho said firmly. The cub is not abandoning Ursine ways. He is finding new ways to be strong. Dr. Yoon-ji Lee, a human psychologist who studied how different species learned together, had been watching from the back of the room. She stepped forward now. If I may, she said politely, I think we're seeing something very special here. Grex is not becoming less Ursine. He's becoming more complete, What does that mean? Ambassador Kurdan asked. It means he's learning that there are many kinds of strength, Dr. Lee explained. Physical strength, yes, but also the strength to admit when you're wrong. The strength to change when you need to. The strength to protect others in new ways. She looked at Grex with respect. What you did just now, explaining your actions and listening to how they affected others, that took great courage. Captain Rothak shook his head. Warriors do not explain themselves to enemies. But we are not enemies, said the crystalline student, her colors now bright with hope. We are classmates. Same thing, Captain Rothak growled. No, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see another Ursine adult in the doorway. This one was even older than Elder Sunho and walked with a staff made from star metal. Elder Korthak, Ambassador Kurdan said, his voice filled with surprise and respect. Elder Korthak walked slowly into the room. He was so old that his fur was almost white and his eyes held the wisdom of many years. When he spoke, everyone listened. I have been watching this academy for many months, he said in a voice like distant mountains. I came here because our council asked me to see if this education program was good for our people. He looked around the room at all the different species standing together. I have seen our cub learn things here that he could never learn on our world. I have seen him grow stronger, not weaker. Captain Rothak stepped forward. Elder, surely you do not approve of this softness. I approve of wisdom, Rothak. And wisdom takes many forms. Elder Korthak moved to stand beside Grex. Young warrior, show me this strength acknowledgement that your teacher spoke of. Grex looked nervous again. This was the most important elder of his people, and he was being asked to perform a ceremony that few outsiders had ever seen. I will try, Elder. Grex turned to face his classmates. He stood tall and proud, but not threatening. His voice was strong, but not angry. I am Grex of the Iron Mountains clan. I growled at you in the way of my people, to show that I am strong, but I did not understand that my strength would make you afraid. I did not understand that fear breaks the bonds between warriors and those they should protect. He looked at each student in turn. You showed me courage by speaking truth to me even when you were afraid. You showed me wisdom by trying to understand my ways, even when they seemed strange to you. Then he did something that no Ursine had ever done before in front of non-Ursine beings. He placed his right fist over his heart and bowed his head slightly, not in defeat but in respect. I acknowledge your strength, he said clearly. You are small in body but large in spirit. You are gentle in nature but fierce in standing up for what is right. I honor you as warriors in your own way. The room was completely silent. Even Captain Rothak had stopped arguing. What they had just seen was something new in the galaxy. An Ursine warrior showing respect without showing weakness. Elder Korthak nodded slowly. Well done, young warrior. You have honored our traditions while building new ones. He turned to address the whole room. This is what I will tell our council. The academy does not make our cubs weak. It makes them wise, and wisdom is the greatest strength of all. Ambassador Kurdan looked at his son with new eyes. Grex, he said softly, I think I have been learning something too. What is that, father? That being proud of you and being worried about you can happen at the same time. And in that moment of understanding between father and son, the bridge between two different worlds grew a little stronger. 3 days later, the main assembly hall of Nexus Academy was more crowded than it had ever been. Word of what happened in Classroom 7B had spread across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to see what would happen next. Grex stood on the stage, looking out at hundreds of faces from dozens of species. His father sat in the front row, still looking worried but also proud. Elder Korthak sat beside him, calm and wise. Captain Rothak was there too, though he still looked skeptical. Behind Grex stood his human classmates, Young Mi, Bo Young, Dae Ho, and Tae Min. The crystalline student was there too, her colors bright with courage. Even the plant students had come, their flower faces open and brave. Professor Veltar floated to the center of the stage. We are here today because something important has happened at our academy. A young Ursine warrior and a human teacher found a new way to solve an old problem. Grex, will you show us what you have learned? Grex stepped forward. His voice was steady and strong as he began to speak. 3 days ago I growled at my teacher and my classmates. In my culture this growl meant, I am strong, do not challenge me. but to my classmates it meant I want to hurt you. I did not understand this difference. Murmurs went through the crowd. Many of the alien representatives were taking notes. This was the first time an Ursine had ever explained their actions to non-Ursine people in public. My teacher asked me to say sorry. In my culture, this would mean I was defeated and weak. I could not do this. But my teacher did not give up on me. He found another way. Grex looked at Hyunwoo, who was standing with the other teachers. He found something in our old traditions called strength acknowledgement. This allows warriors to show respect without showing defeat. But more than that, Grex continued, he taught me that there are many kinds of strength. Physical strength, yes, but also the strength to learn new things. The strength to admit when you are wrong. The strength to protect others in ways you never thought of before. The hall was completely quiet. Everyone was listening to words they had never heard before from an Ursine. I want to show you what I learned, Grex said. But first, I want to tell you about my classmates. He turned to look at the students behind him. When I growled, they could have run away. They could have demanded that I be sent home. But they did not. They tried to understand me. They stood up for me when adults wanted to punish me. They showed me courage and kindness, young me. Stepped forward and whispered something to Grex. He nodded and smiled. The first smile anyone had seen from him since he arrived at the academy. My friend Young Me reminds me of something important, Grex said. She says that saying sorry and showing strength are not opposite things. She says that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit that you made a mistake. The crowd stirred. This was definitely not traditional Ursine thinking. So I want to try something new, Grex announced. I want to combine the old way and the new way. He turned to face his classmates. Then in a voice that carried across the entire hall, he began the strength acknowledgement ceremony. I am Grex of the Iron Mountains clan, he said, standing tall and proud. I acknowledge your strength. You faced your fear and tried to help me learn. You showed kindness to someone who scared you. You stood up for what was right even when it was difficult. He placed his fist over his heart and bowed his head slightly. I honor you as warriors in your own way, and because you have taught me wisdom, I also say this. I am sorry that my actions made you afraid. I am sorry that I did not think about how my strength would affect others. I promise to use my strength to protect and help, not to threaten and scare. The silence that followed was so complete that you could hear the hum of the station's air systems. An Ursine warrior had just done two things that had never been done before. Performed strength acknowledgement for non-Ursine beings, and apologized while maintaining his honor. Then something unexpected happened. The crystalline student stepped forward. Her small body was glowing with bright, happy colors. Grex, she said in her bell-like voice, I acknowledge your strength too. It took great courage to stand here and say these things. You are a true warrior, not because you can fight, but because you can learn and grow and change. One by one, the other students stepped forward and performed their own versions of strength acknowledgement. The plant students opened their flower faces wide. The water people made soft bubble sounds of respect. The rock people stamped their feet in approval. Even the human students joined in. Young Mi, Bo Young, Daeho, and Tae Min all stood with their hands over their hearts, showing respect in the Ursine way. In the audience, Ambassador Kurdan stood up slowly. His eyes were wet with tears, something no one had ever seen from an Ursine adult before. My son, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. You have made me proud. Not because you are strong in the old way, but because you are strong in a new way. Elder Korthok stood up too. What we have seen today is the birth of a new tradition. Not just for Ursine people, but for all people. The strength to build bridges instead of walls. The courage to learn instead of fight. He looked around the hall at all the different species represented there. I propose that we establish a new program here at the Academy. We will call it Diplomatic Combat. The art of fighting for understanding instead of fighting for victory. Professor Veltar floated forward, his aquatic form shimmering with excitement. The Academy accepts this proposal, and we ask Teacher Hyunwoo to lead this new program. All eyes turned to Hyunwoo. He looked surprised but honored. I accept, he said simply. But I want Grex to be my first assistant teacher. He has learned these lessons better than anyone. The crowd erupted in sounds of approval from dozens of different species. Applause, clicks, whistles, and growls of happiness filled the hall. But the most important sound was the soft laughter coming from Grex as his classmates surrounded him. no longer afraid but excited to learn more about his culture and to teach him about theirs. Over the following months, the story of what happened in Classroom 7B spread to every corner of the galaxy. Other species began sending their young to the academy, eager to learn the new way of resolving conflicts. The program that started with one human teacher and one confused ursine cub grew into something that changed how different peoples understood each other. Years later, when Grex had become a full teacher himself, students would ask him about that day when everything changed. "What was the most important thing you learned?" they would ask, and Grex, now wise and patient, would always give the same answer. "I learned that saying sorry does not make you weak. It makes you strong enough to build bridges, and bridges are how we reach each other across the darkness between stars." The human approach had won not through force or argument, but through patience, understanding, and the willingness to find new ways to honor old truths. In a galaxy full of different peoples, that might have been the most important victory of all. And in the quiet halls of Nexus Academy, where students from hundreds of worlds learned together in peace, the legacy of that moment continued to grow. One conversation, one friendship, one bridge at a time.